Good evening. My name is Steve Worthington. I'm the mayor of University Place, and I'm calling to order our August 1st, 2022 council meeting. And with that, we'll start with the roll call.
Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel, present.
Councilmember Wood.
Councilmember Wood, present.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey, present.
Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Belisi.
Councilmember Belisi here.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, present.
Mayor Worthington.
Mayor Worthington, present.
Have a quorum.
Thank you. And Councilmember McCluskey, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Very good. And now we can move on to the approval of our agenda. And is there a motion to approve the agenda this evening or change?
Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, a motion to approve. Is there a second?
This is Councilmember Belisi. Are you second?
Motion and a second. All those in, this is a consent item, so does anyone object to the agenda as presented? I see no objection. The agenda is approved. It's now an opportunity for us to move to public comments, and we have a multitude of ways for those comments to take place, including providing them in person. We have a sign-up sheet with several names on it. We'll start with those in just a moment after I explain the other methods by which people can make comment as well. So we also have the opportunity to comment via your computer online, and you can sign into our meeting via our website. Use the raise hand function to be recognized, and the city clerk will, or someone on the staff will unmute you for your comments. We also have the ability to take comments via email, and if we receive comments before 5 p.m., those comments are shared with us for this evening. Do we have any comments this evening? All right, thank you. No comments via email for tonight, but we would see them later if you would like. And then we also have the ability to take comments via a phone as well. That number you can see on your screen, but it's 509-342-7253, and the conference ID is 283-681-474#. You can use the raise hand function via your phone by pushing *5, and you can unmute with a *6. Those essentially complete our various methods. Whatever method you use in terms of verbal comments during this section of the meeting, your comments are certainly welcome, and everyone receives 3 minutes of time to be able to do that. And with that, we can start with comments here from the council chambers. The first name on the list is Chris Saunders, and do you wish to make a comment now? Yes. Mm-hmm. And if you could state your name and address for us, Chris. Mm-hmm.
Greetings, City Council members, City Manager Steve Suggs, other city employees, and distinguished guests. I'm Chris Saunders. I'm from 7786 40th Street, University Place, and I'm here tonight to represent the now forming University Place Parks and Recreation Foundation. This foundation is being designated to support projects in the city for the enhancement of our parks and recreation. Our first project is the inclusive destination playground that you are discussing tonight. As each of you are aware, an inclusive playground is designed differently than a traditional playground to allow children with cognitive and mobility issues to play together with children of all abilities. In University Place School District, we have 588 children currently enrolled in special services ranging from ages 3 to 21 in communities surrounding us: Clover Park, Tacoma, Pierce, Franklin Pierce, Puyallup, Bethel, Fife school districts. We have 13,999 children also in that designation. Families who will benefit from a playground that like this, as cited from the Washington State Superintendent of Public Instruction Office. Currently, there are yet other families outside of those districts that will also visit and enjoy the playground once it is built. Our foundation has worked with Jack Eklund and Tony West to lay out a footprint for the best location possible for the playground in University Place. In the project, we will be adding 2 additional family restrooms to the budget to meet the needs of families with disabled children. We are very grateful for the hard work and quick response from the city personnel and the Parks Advisory Commission on this project, and wholeheartedly support the footprint option before you tonight. Thank you very much. I'm Chris Saunders.
Thank you, Ms. Saunders. Appreciate your comments. Next on our list is Steve Groshans. And Steve, if you'd like to come forward. Yes, bow. And you have 3 minutes once you start. So, thank you for being here.
Good evening again, folks. I was here last session. Fortunately, I was cut off short on that. The chief recently opined that it might be 3 years for 3 a year for 3 years over the next 34 months.
I'm sorry to interrupt, and we'll start you again with new time. But if you could state your full name and address. I should have given you that.
Is the address required, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
On the sign-in, it said it wasn't required.
It's my knowledge it is, but I'll bow to someone here who's parliamentarian for us. So. Okay.
All in duty as your parliamentarian, Mr. Mayor, and address is not required. Simply, the individual could identify themselves with John Doe, University Place.
All right, very good. Thank you.
John Doe, but I do reside in University Place.
Okay. Thank you. We'll start you with fresh time.
Are we starting the...
Your name, sir?
Stephen Gregorich. And this is a continuation on the issue of the levy. So the chief recently opined that it might be 3 a year for 3 years over the next 34 months in the hiring process. He also talked about renting overtime hires from other jurisdictions. I know you want to build a nest egg to ensure sufficient funds as costs rise for the new employees over the next decade or so. How much is enough? I believe the community would get much more bang for their buck and create better visibility if you would fill in for the 3 officers who you likely won't hit the street until October 2023 with temporary help. You'll maybe have time to catch up during the second year. I think you might have a hard time selling if people were actually aware of the hiring process and the subsequent delay for boots on the ground. If the COOs are desired as opposed to necessary, might there be grants available out there to fill those particular positions and save precious levy dollars for fully commissioned uniformed personnel? Even if it's only enough for 1 hire, if you don't hire the 2, it's important for the visibility. And particularly, Mr. Mayor, in the last meeting you said, hey, we can hire 2 for the price of 1. I'd like to turn that on its head and say we can hire 1 for the price of 2 because we actually need that. 25 to 30 years ago, I spoke to a chief of police of a small town in Pierce County. He told me you can't always stop crime, but you can make it so that the bad guys want to go somewhere else. That's part of the visibility that I continue to talk about. Visibility is a key to that, as is the bravery of men and women who would consider this job under today's current atmosphere. So I guess what I'm saying in conclusion from my proceedings before was I'm trying to lobby you to make sure we get the bang for the buck and people later don't come and look at you and say, but we paid for 9, 10, 12 employees and now you're telling me we have 3. I think you need to be in front of that before anything happens in that regard, and I think you need to do the best to put as many boots on the ground as possible, as quickly as possible, to maintain the confidence of your citizens. Thank you very much for affording me that opportunity.
Mr. Gravich, thank you. Appreciate hearing your comments and thoughts.
3 minutes right there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Good. Is there anyone else that would like to make a in-person public comment? And I don't see anyone offhand. Do we have anyone online at this point? I don't see any hands raised on my screen, but I can't see all the participants. No. All right. Then I believe and I assume we don't have anyone on the phone either, or else I'd be hearing about that as well. Very good. Then I think at this point we'll move on and move to our form-based code discussion where,
No consent.
excuse me, council consideration, consent agenda. Thank you. Move on to the consent agenda. Yes.
Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Councilmember Belisi, I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Does anyone object to the consent agenda as distributed? I'm not seeing any objections. With that, the consent agenda is approved. Thank you. Now we can move to the form-based code discussion. And David Swindale is going to be presenting that information for us. And thank you, David. I see you on the screen now. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. You have actually studied this matter twice before, so I'm going to keep it brief and just summarize the council bill. On December 7th, 2020, the City Council adopted Ordinance 741, integrating a form-based code into our existing zoning code. At that time, the form-based code was adopted. The city recognized that there may be a need to amend the form-based code based on lessons learned during the first year of implementation. Obviously, this has proven to be correct. Amendments to the zoning code to facilitate the implementation of the form-based code include changing craft production facilities to a commercial use type and regulating them by size to minimize their impacts. Introducing a setback requirement for single-family and mixed use, or rather developed duplexes in the mixed use zones. There wasn't anything before that, and they would have had to comply with the commercial design standards. A commercial storefront requirement between 35th and 40th on Bridgeport Way. A ground floor glazing requirement in mixed-use zones, increasing a setback for multiplex building types to allow more frontage types to be constructed, and having a correction to the street type table and parking lot standards to be consistent with revised use tables. During the process, a planning commission recommended that potentially a conditional use permit alternative for mitigating craft production facilities was considered. However, it was decided that dividing them into 2 levels by size was selected to mitigate impacts. The planning commission voted unanimously to recommend the proposed amendments and adopted findings to support their recommendation in accordance with the municipal code. The recommendation tonight is to pass an ordinance amending Title 19 of the University Place Municipal Code to assist in the implementation of the form-based code. That is my report.
Your report, and do we have any clarifying questions for David at this point? Again, as he appropriately pointed out, this is we've stated this numerous times, and I think our questions have had ample opportunity, but just in case. Okay. Not seeing any. Do we have any public comment? Any members of the public that would like to, in person, online, or via phone, make comment about this particular item, so the council can consider it before we take action on the item. And I can once again go through that process I did a few moments ago. Perhaps we can put that up for a moment, and folks can reference it there. Thank you. So, again, our phone number for phone contact is 509-342-7253 for phone comment. Conference ID 283-681-474 pound. And the computer contact is pretty straightforward if you're online now. So. Are we seeing anything? All right. Well, then I think we can move on to council consideration.
Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. I make a motion to approve the proposed council action passing an ordinance amending the Title 19 of the University Place Municipal Code to assist in the implementation of the form-based code.
Okay. Thank you. We have a motion for approval. Is there a second?
This is Councilmember Belisi. I second.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Belisi. And so we have a proper motion. Is there discussion? And Councilmember Keel.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank staff for all the work that you've done on this amendment. And I want to just say up front my strong support for this amendment, and actually my strong support for form-based code in general. We've talked about this several years ago, and we now, at least from my perspective, I can actually see the benefit of what this has done for our city. When I look at the new construction that's going on and how developers and contractors have engaged with the form-based code, I think that has been very positive, and I think the designs that we see are going to benefit our city for a long time to come.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. Councilmember Wood, would you care to make a comment at this time? Okay, very good. Councilmember McCluskey, would you care to make a comment? Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Fleming, anything you'd like to add? Yeah, oh, yes. And turning on the mic would be a good place to start. Okay, there we are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. David, thank you so much for your presentation. When I first came on the council, I have to admit I knew very little about form-based code. It was a radical departure from what I had understood zoning to be previously. And to echo the comments that were just made with regards to transformation of the city, I think this particular ordinance and policies are really moving the city well into the 21st century and positioning us well to have a community that I think we can all be very proud of. So, and I know you have been part of that spearhead of this project. So, thanks for your work and the other folks who have contributed to bringing this thing to fruition. So, appreciate it. Much appreciated.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Belisi.
No, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. And Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing I would comment on is that with the Planning Commission as staff, someone from our staff that deals with our Planning Commission, city manager, given a thank you to the Planning Commissioners for their energy and time involved in reviewing and making these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. And from my perspective, we anticipated as we put together the form-based code and finalized it that there would be some fine-tuning, and this certainly is in that category. I do appreciate all the effort the Planning Commission has gone to help us make that fine-tuning as effective as possible, and I think I know I stand ready to support this. Also appreciate all the staff work on putting this together. With that, we can go to a vote.
Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel, aye.
Councilmember Wood.
Councilmember Wood, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey. Aye. Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Belisi.
Councilmember Belisi, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, aye.
Mayor Worthington.
Mayor Worthington, aye.
The motion carries.
Very good. The motion passes. And we can move on to, again, a thank you to the Commission for their work, and an invitation now for City Manager Sugg to make any comments he wishes for tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the Council. In your packet is a letter to the CEO, Mike Griffiths, of Pierce Transit, indicating the city's letter of support, providing a letter of support for Pierce Transit's efforts to establish a high-capacity transit corridor known as Bus Rapid Transit along the current Route 2, which is along Bridgeport Way, connects Lakewood Town Center to downtown Tacoma. On July 5th, Council heard a presentation from representatives from Pierce Transit. They gave a PowerPoint presentation. They answered questions from Council. And in doing so, they also asked if the city would provide a letter of support for their, so that they can indicate that to their board when they present that in September. So in your packet is this letter of support, this draft letter of support, which is, if there's no objections, it would be sent out this week to Pierce Transit. And in it, it includes the things that Pierce Transit is hoping that we would be supportive of. It also includes the things that a particular item of interest that Council had at the July 5th meeting, and that was assurance from Pierce Transit that they would preserve the large $20 million investment that the city has made in the streetscapes, sidewalks, and other improvements along Bridgeport Way. And you heard from Pierce Transit that their intent was to not disturb those. They'd be minimally affected, but virtually we would have preserve the existing improvements as you see. The details to be worked out, but you heard a commitment that they would not be disturbing those improvements in any meaningful way. So with that, I'll just stop right there and just indicate that this letter that's in your packet, we believe reflects the Council's interest, the city's interest in partnering with Pierce Transit, in working with their design teams, and our city engineering director, Jack Eklund, and his team will be working with Pierce Transit as they further go through the study and design and construction of this corridor. I'm sure there'll be more reports to the Council on Bus Rapid Transit, but this is the very first step following that presentation that you heard from Pierce Transit on July 5th.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Sugg. Anything else?
Unless well, there's other topics, but I'll just stop right there in case there's questions or concerns the Council has. I think you've probably all had a chance to look this over, and I've spoken with each of you about this, and we believe it reflects it. But if there's any concerns at this time, I'd be glad to entertain those. And I also have Jack Eklund, our engineering director, on standby to answer any technical questions that are beyond my capabilities.
Well, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa has asked for the mic. He has it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve, Mr. Sugg, excuse me. If I understand this correctly, they will be required to go through a permitting application or review or something like that before they make any changes or to any part of our sidewalk. I know it would be minimal, insignificant, but yet whatever that may be, they would have to apply for that change, correct?
They would. Okay. Absolutely. A right-of-way permit would be required to be submitted, just like anything that's done along our corridor, including city improvements.
So that's at a time that if the city didn't feel that, if we felt that they were going further than what we would hope, we could actually stop that from happening through the permitting process, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The details matter, and
Right.
the plans and the construction details matter, and so we'll be reviewing those very carefully.
Right.
But I don't anticipate surprises, but because we'll be working with them
Right.
all along the way.
Sure.
But it's a great question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Certainly. Any other, let's see, Councilmember Fleming, just, we'll get your mic on. There we are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve, when Pierce Transit talks about construction in our main thoroughfares, what kind of construction are they envisioning?
Councilmember Fleming, I will defer that question or flip that question to Engineering Director Jack Eklund. He might be able to illuminate us on what their plans are.
Yeah, I think right now what their plans would be is mostly just being involved in expanding their stops themselves to have the infrastructure for the rapid transit, the collection, where they basically the system would be you would pay in advance, so then as you're getting on and off the bus, you go, it's a quick board and both on and offload boarding. So there would be some additional amenities associated with that at the individual stops. The number of stops would be reduced, so this wouldn't be at every stop you see out there currently. So there would be some probably limited widening of the sidewalk, I would assume, to accommodate some of these areas. But they are not proposing any changes to the actual physical vehicular area or the medians or anything like that. The other improvements they've been looking at are some transit priority, which we already have on most of our signals, but they would be looking at potentially upgrading that to improve system.
So, Jack, currently on Bridgeport, I think the last count we had is 30,000 cars a day that transit up and down that road. What's the impact of that with this program overlying that?
And actually, well, so there's two factors. The one is they would currently, the current bus route runs at about 30-minute intervals. And so if we did bus rapid transit, it would increase to 15-minute intervals. However, they are looking at reducing the number of stops at least by half. And then in addition, the actual boarding of the vehicles, the amount of time a bus would be stopped would be dramatically reduced. So overall, even though they would be increasing the number of buses, the number of stops decrease, and how long it takes them to stop also decrease. And so the net impact would be a less delay to the regular vehicles going up and down the street.
Okay, and then my last question is, with that in mind, currently when those at our bus stops, we don't have a full pullout. So when those buses stop, you lose a lane until it starts again, which backs up traffic. With this proposal, would we have maybe a cutout where those buses can actually pull off the lane to keep it open, or we're just going to leave it as it is?
At this point, they haven't identified whether they would do it or not. If you were to do a pullout, there would be potentially a need for some additional right-of-way acquisition, so that'd be something they would need to consider if they choose this route going forward. And that's something we certainly could talk to them about. There are some spots that may not be feasible. You know, our busiest spots, stops here in UP are one here at Town Center, another one right there kind of right in front of Green Firs. And although the one side we probably could widen toward the park, the other side is very limited on the Green Firs and the impact on parking. So they may have some constraints to be able to do a pullout in UP in every spot.
Something maybe to think about. And Green Firs is a good example because of the drop-off. You can't pull out, but maybe change the location of the bus stop for that. I don't know. But, as you work through the negotiations on that, my request would be just if we could keep those things in mind, because it is an opportunity to improve transportation, at the same token, an opportunity to improve our roadway, to move vehicles expeditiously. So it might be a win-win for everyone to look at this.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Keel.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And Jack, thank you for your comments on this, and City Manager Sugg, thank you for that. This is the main reason why I raised this in the very beginning about paying attention to that, and so my plan is to be in those board meetings at Pierce Transit and representing all of Pierce Transit, but also representing the city. And so I would just invite all of us to have that conversation with staff and us about what our concerns are. We can actually get some specificity around all the things we're talking about, pullouts and stopping traffic and all those things. And my plan is to bring that to the Pierce Transit Board meeting in the boardroom at the dais when we talk about it, and really talk to my colleagues there about what our concerns are. So my goal is to do exactly what I'm sent there to do from this body, and that's to represent us. And so at that board, and so I'm fully prepared to do that, and I'll just hope we all can engage in some detailed conversations about what it is that we want and what it is that we don't want in our city, and we can certainly represent that. Now, having said that, the main concept of a BRT, we already have BRT 1 that's running down, that's planned to run down Pacific Avenue all the way from Frederick down to downtown Tacoma. And that's a total different design of what they should do here. And that's why I was real nervous, because I know what they're doing there. I mean, they're putting things that in the middle of the road, right? And the notion is that BRT is supposed to act like a train on wheels. And so instead of how now people get on from the ground and you step up into the bus, to make it go faster, you have to have a raised platform, and people just walk across level with the bus. So you can get a bicycle on, get all that stuff. And as Jack said, they're prepaid. So they're not fussing with media trying to pay. They just get on. So they stop, they get on, they close the door, and they take off. And they're in BRT 1, like I said, we're doing it in the median. And here, that's not going to work. So there is talk about what Pierce Transit is going to do, but there is no design. And that's where we, as a council, need to get into that mix so that we can inform how we want that design to look within our city.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate that. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Just I'll keep mine brief. I do share the concerns that my other fellow council members have raised, but based on the last paragraph in this letter that was proposed by Mr. Sugg, I can support this letter because it allows for those considerations at a later date. So that's just the only thing I wanted to say is I think the letter accounts for, if not specific concerns, at least the potential to deal with them in the future. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And with that, I think all the council members that wish to have had an opportunity to make comment. Mr. Sugg, does that help give you some information?
It does, Mayor. And if I may, I just make two more mentions on non-BRT items for the manager's report. Chip seal is essentially done. The city's chip seal program for 2022. We do about 8 miles a year, as you know, as we have in the past several years. So this week is the seal coating process, which is it provides an asphalt sealant over top, and then that's the final step in that project. And then thirdly, we've got continued striping of our arterials. You'll notice fresh paint on many of the arterials. I think we all appreciate that. The lanes are much more visible than they were prior to that. So we appreciate, and that's all coming out of Public Works and Engineering. So again, thank you, Jack, for that work and your team doing an excellent job taking advantage of this wonderful weather. With that, Mayor, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Sugg. Well, we'll go around for council comments, and we're going to start with Councilmember Keel per our habit. So.
Great, thank you, Mayor.
just, excuse me, council member, I inadvertently turned off your mic. So if you wouldn't mind requesting, there we are. I'll see if I can do it right here. Okay.
Great, thank you. Thank you. I wanted to talk about BRT, so I'm glad we got that taken care of. And the other two things I wanted to raise is with Sound Transit. That board has just passed the alignment, the temporary draft alignment for West Seattle Ballard. And that is the light rail going from West Seattle all the way down through downtown, the Central District, up through the north end of downtown, up through Ballard, through the Seattle Center and over into Ballard. It's the longest, most complex alignment that we have in that $54 billion effort, because it's going through, downtown Seattle and, acquiring land. So anyway, it's very, very, very involved. A lot of people have their oar in the water talking about how that could be, how that impacts us in our city as well as in Pierce County, is that the longer time it takes to do that work and the more money it costs to do that work, then that's less time for our stuff, longer time for us to get our stuff done here, and more money that we as citizens would have to pay into that process, just adding dollars upon dollars. And so my goal as the chair of that was to get through that process as efficiently and as quickly as possible without adding billions of more dollars to that segment. Because if you can imagine, in human nature, people want gold-plated everything, right? And so it was just having that conversation about what's reasonable and how we need to work through that. And so we have now a temporary alignment. I think it's a minimum impact to Snohomish County and Pierce County, and so that's good news. The part that's still questionable are, and understandably so, there are some very high impacts that have to happen within the international district as that we need to consider, where they're going to actually cost more than what we have budgeted. And unfortunately, that's not something that we can get around. So from my perspective, that's not something as a representative of Pierce County or even as chair that I can push not to do, if that makes sense. So there is going to be some additional costs that are going to impact us and some additional time that's going to impact us. But my goal, as I said before, is to keep that to a minimum. So there's that. More to come on all that. Hopefully we plan to get through all of that planning by February of next year, and we'll see what the impact, the bottom line dollar impact, is going to be for us there. The other thing that I want to just say to staff and also to council is just to keep this in mind. I'm working with Dave and staff around the Four Corners, and that's the effort up here at Mildred and 19th, where all the three cities come together, as well as Tacoma Housing Authority on that one corner. And this is where light rail is going to end sometime in 2040 something or another when it gets here. And so what my goal and plan there is to get out in front of the planning and make sure that Sound Transit doesn't come through and just erase everything that we've done there with eminent domain and just tear up things. And so to make sure they're more thoughtful about the dollars and the businesses that have already invested their money there, and so that we can come with something a little bit more palatable. So as I said, David and staff are working, and we've got letters out. We're bringing in the groups of people to talk, and so there's just more to come. I just want to put that out there to let you know that work is still going on. And if there will be some things that we as a council will have to react to, and when those come up, we'll certainly let you know.
Very good. Councilmember Keel, thank you. Appreciate you keeping us posted with what's going on with Sound Transit and Pierce Transit, given your work on, president of one and on the board of the other. It's good insight for us in helping us be ready for the future. Councilmember Wood, would you like to make comments tonight? No, there you are. Okay. That's interesting.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a brief comment. I was able to participate in the Twisted Cider 5K last Saturday. Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem were there as well. It was a great event. I encourage us to support this in the future. Had a lot of fun. We had probably close to 400 walkers and runners out there. A lot of support from the community. A lot of people out there waving cowbells. It was good fun and a beautiful day. Yes. So thank you.
It was indeed. Thank you for those comments. And that brings us to Councilmember McCluskey. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I'm glad that Twisted Cider was a great event. I'd like to see a annual running walk event in University Place. Mm-hmm. And congratulations to our Mayor Pro Tem. In his age category, he came in second. So congratulations. And I have to admit, I got a medal for not even participating. I found it in my mailbox. And I thought, I didn't have to sweat or do anything. But I'm sure Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Woods are of a little different, probably, design for the actual participant. Yeah. So thank you for representing our city. And also our mayor. I guess you started off the runs, right? Runners?
Yes, I did get to start off the run, and I also got to hand out the awards at the end. So it was fun to do.
All right, great. So I was at, as well as Mayor Pro Tem, the PCRC meeting on Thursday instead of attending our event at the current apple orchard. My husband was there playing the harmonica with Maya Santel and the House Blend. And I got good reviews about him from other people, so I passed that word along, and unfortunately, I had to miss that. But I'm glad. I heard it was well attended. The weather was great, and the music was awesome. So that was a huge success, and the grass was mowed. Yay. So at the PCRC meeting on the 21st, there was a public testimony that was given, and it was by Mr. Wick, and he was talking about the flood control interlocal between Geek Harbor and Pierce County, and then another comment by Councilmember Gunther of Ording about House Bill 1220 in regards to putting out, I guess they request that all Pierce County council members go and walk the walk of people that are homeless. So as we address those issues, we know firsthand some of the things that we're dealing with. So I thought that was a great idea. And then one of the presenters was from the Department of Commerce, Laura Hodgson. She's a senior planner, and she talked about House Bill 1220 as well, under the Growth Management Act. That is, as we know, a plan to accommodate housing to all income sectors, and she talked about the population projections and household size variance, historic being underproductive issues as well, and influencers to help make noted adjustments, and talked about some moderate density and housing options within the urban growth areas. You know, as we know, duplexes, triplexes, and multifamily units. All those things that we're currently trying to do in our city. Accessory dwellings, you know, our housing action plan, all those things we're doing. So it's nice to hear it from an expert as how they're going to look and assess some things to see how we're tracking. Then also, you know, she identified some local policies to help us identify local policies, to help with the desperate impacts and that undo radically and racially some of the impacts for displacement and exclusion. Also talked about the timeline that House Bill 1220 has, which we all know, and we're all going to have to get it all done by December of 2024. So there'll be big updates coming and important ones coming for us to work on. And in regards to that, our planning director, I don't know his new title, but we all know Kevin Brisky. He has acquired a grant through SHAPE, one of the executive committees that I'm on, in regards to housing. That has just been, that's a New Start organization, and so they will be the clearinghouse for that particular grant that we were awarded. And so other presenters, Jason Guthier of SHAPE, as well as County Executive Dan Meyer, talked about the work plan, which we already reviewed with the SHAPE director who came and did the presentation to us. And also with a added incentive and encouragement to, as our city council knows, that we're trying to do the same to get on as many regional and state boards as possible, in particular to housing and land use, because we're not represented at all, basically, come bottom line. So if we can look and see where we can fit in, especially with the virtual platforms that meetings are going to, maybe we can help with that and get our voices heard more directly. Excuse me. And then Councilmember Keel and I received an email from Mr. Guthier, the SHAPE manager, and to talk over some of the state legislative agenda items that SHAPE will be talking about in our September meeting. So we'll be meeting, I think it was August 16th, around 4 o'clock. So we'll be talking about that. There is a format that is already out there, so we'll be looking over that, as well as looking at some of the things are city specific, which I had outlined in our email. Okay. And then Anne Marie Dougherty of the Flood District, she came and talked about just an update on what's going on there and the 10 cents per 1,000 that we pay for that authority. And I am going to stop there because I'm sure Mayor Pro Tem has other things to add. It was quite a long, intense meeting, and I just captured just the tip of the iceberg. Thank you.
Councilmember McCluskey, thank you for spending your energy on that and keeping us posted with what's going on. There's a lot that passes through that body, and it's great to be in touch with that. So appreciate your efforts for that. Councilmember Fleming, do you have anything you'd like to add tonight? Okay, there we go.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have anything to add to that. Instead of looking back, I just wanted to look ahead and just remind folks, I'm going to presume you'll talk more about it, but tomorrow night is National Night Out. We've got a lot of activities going on in the city, and just wanted to encourage, folks to turn out, enjoy the evening, and celebrate National Night Out. So that's it.
Excellent idea and good reminder for us all. So I have a few details for council, but no problem talking about it several times. Councilmember Belisi.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to remind our citizens that the USGA Women's Amateur is coming to Chambers Bay beginning August 7th through the 14th. It is an open event to the community, and there is no charge to watch these women from all over the country and all over the world play. However, the walking path and the central meadow and the dog park will be closed during the event for security reasons. So if you do want to get out and see the nice view, I would suggest that you go and support and cheer on the women that are going to be out here golfing on the world stage again. And hopefully we get as good a coverage as we got during the U.S. Open, and that people will see what a beautiful place this is in August, and the heat wave will have been over by then, so it makes it even more enjoyable. I also wanted to remind the community, Music in the Squares every Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m. Out front of the library and the Civic Building. We request that you come on down, enjoy the good, nice evening, support our local musicians and also our local business community. I know that our restaurants and Happy Duo are open for extended hours, so if you want a cup of coffee, something cold to drink, or some food, they are open to serve you, as well as we typically have a food truck to add to it if you've got some needs that the restaurants don't particularly satisfy, or if you just want to try a little bit of everything. Also, August 4th is another concert at the Orchard. That is from 6:30 to 8:30. Bring your picnic baskets and your blankets and come out and enjoy, again, local musicians, and just have a nice summer evening out away from the house. With that, that's all I've got.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you. Oh, by the way, we're going to see each other Sunday.
Yes.
And do you remember the time? I want to say it's like 2 o'clock.
Yeah, it's later in the day. Here, let me check my calendar.
I mentioned that because we get to
11:30 to 3.
11:30 to 3. So Councilmember Polisi and I will be starters. Is that the right term?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. We're going to be helping each other call out the names for the women's amateur on Sunday. And I believe it's for the Northwest area of golfers. So the amateurs in the Northwest, if you're looking for them particularly, I happen to know they're going to be coming on the course about the time we mentioned, 11:30 to 3 or so. Yeah, so we're honored to be able to do that. Later. That looks like a check. All right. Let's see, but Mayor Pro Tem, did you have something else you'd like to add?
I have so much, but I'll curtail it. Well, just for fun, the apple cider twist, I do appreciate the staff for bringing it to the city. I know that I came to surprise. I mean, I didn't hear about it until you guys meaning the staff, presented it to us. And I'm really thankful. And especially I heard that Marion Holloway did a tremendous amount of work in keeping that coordinated. I do appreciate any staff that has that kind of a duties and a large event, and especially the first one to go as well as it did. I think it represented our city really, really well. The only thing is I've been involved in big events, tournaments like that, not in walks or runs, but certainly in racquetball tournaments. And I can tell you things can go afoul real quick where people don't want to go back to that event again. And I have to say that the people that I ran into were just happy campers, and they can't wait till next year, including me. So thank you, staff, for bringing it to the city. That being said, on August the 1st, on July the 21st, as with Councilmember McCluskey, and thank you, Councilmember McCluskey, for being on board, because there's so much that goes on that council, and with my assigned duties from that council to the PSRC, I have my hands full. So I do appreciate McCluskey's participation to take up a lot of the other notes that have to be taken to bring forth here, because I don't think I could carry that load by myself. I don't know who could. So thank you very much. That being said, I'm going to focus on the PSRC assignments that I have. As you all know, I'm on the executive board as well as the operations committee and the economic development board. That being said, on the 21st, when we met with PCRC, I did report, as you know, we had our council meeting here, And so my report to them was two. One is that I gave here, and I'm not going to go through that information again, on the Central District Economic Development Board as well as the PSRC Operations Committee and Executive Board meetings on July the 14th that I reported here. So I reported on that, and then on July the 28th, we had a PSRC Operations Committee, and not to bore you with all the details, what I figured I would do during this time is to highlight significant work that was done with those committees or boards that impact University Place, impact PCRC tremendously. As you know, they do a lot of work around the region, so there's a lot of things that are happening, money's moving, policies developing, and so I don't think it's appropriate unless this council would like to hear about all the other cities and counties. So I'll be happy to do that in a special presentation maybe if that's the council's wishes. But for now, I'll focus on our county. And that is the main thing that came out of the Operations Committee is that we voted and recommended the new office space that I had told you about, which is 1201 3rd Avenue, Seattle, to the Executive Board. And then after that, that was at 9 o'clock on July 28th. At 10 o'clock, it was the PSRC Executive Board meeting. And we did vote to authorize the Executive Director to sign the lease for the new office space. So we will be moving, PSRC, will be moving in 2024. Among many other items to approve, we also voted to approve the PCRC 2025-2026 project list, which you've heard about from the PCRC list. And so that got presented, and through the chair of the Transportation Board, and they approved it, and then they presented it to the Executive Board, which we voted on and approved. That being said, I just think it's important that you know that there is waves around how projects are selected in Pierce County, and I did brief you on that from Deputy Mayor Withens from the last round about his concerns about certain cities getting more than others, more grants and more funds than others, and wanted to see a change in that. He was present at the Executive Board, and when this came about to be approved, he did speak that any funds, grants to be released for the contingency list in the future, if there was any, that it would be put on hold and not released until PCRC could make the changes that it needs for changing the list. And so what I did is my job as the lead delegate. He's an alternate, but as the lead delegate representing the PCRC, the council, I did remind the board, the Executive Board, that what's before them is a package from PCRC with a full vote of the council and a recommendation for this board to vote on. And there was no other amendments, verbiage added to that recommendation to this board to delay or change the policy on funding the contingency list. So that happened as well during that time. That being said, though, I did, and this goes into my next comment, so that got approved. On July the 29th, I'll talk about some follow-up on that, but I'm going by dates here. July the 29th, I attended the selection committee for the for and against levy that's coming up, with the mayor and the finance chair, Edward Wood, and I'll let the mayor complete that report as to what happened. But I attended those meetings, those two. So that was at 1 o'clock, July the 29th. At 2 o'clock, I met with Josh Brown, the Executive Director for PSRC, Steve Sugg, Jack Eklund, and the mayor. And the reason for that meeting was twofold for me. One is, as a new guy, and really with a blank mind on what PCRC, the Ops, and the Economic Development Board actually do and how the money moves, the policies, who has the authority and who does what. So I had spent, as I mentioned in my prior meeting, that I met with Josh Brown for 2 hours in Seattle and to brief me in detail on all these matters. We didn't finish, so we finished on Friday the 29th, and we met here in the manager's conference room. And twofold, meaning that I wanted to really get an idea, because what's going to be happening in the future with how money is distributed from the Federal Highway Administration will be determined at this level in 2024, how all that happens. And so I really want to make sure that whatever policy changes on distribution and the categories, which they'll determine there, that we as Pierce County, who I represent, and its cities and towns are not put on the sideline as they change categories in the distribution. And that's my primary concern and focus. That being said, part of that conversation was, again, about Deputy Mayors Withings from Puyallup and Mayor Pinner, who's the chair of the PCRC, to better understand what their issue is with how changes can be made on the criteria for geographic locations and things like that. So I did prog Josh Brown on this, and I got enlightened. And that being said, I do have a meeting with Pinner and Withens coming up in August. I don't remember the date, but in August here soon. And I called them and emailed them, I guess, and they were willing to meet. I said, we really need to meet before the technical committee, who was requested from the executive, the PCRC council, to look into this criteria, and with no real parameters and sideboards. So I wanted to see what that may look like. That includes what PCRC and all these processes may need to be embedded. And so now I have a meeting with them. I'm going to disclose what I found out, which I think is going to be very informative and may change the outcome, or at least the process by which the PCRC may actually look at this. It may be more of a policy issue versus a technical issue. So that being said, I'll stop there, but I just want to let you know, because that's work on our behalf here as well as the county's. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good.
But before I go anywhere, I do want to ask that, because there's a lot of great information that I wish I would have had trickled in during the time I've been in the council on all these bodies and processes and grants and monies. I would entertain to this council, if you wish. I know some of you guys have been involved with PCRC in different ways, but I certainly will take the time and effort to put together under a presentation, not council comments, and take 15 minutes to and maybe do that 2 or 3 times during the year, to really highlight certain parts that any one of us may be in my place. As we know, it changes. And it would be nice to have any of those council members that sit in the future, and how they can participate and why it's important to participate at that level that impacts our city and our community. So I'll welcome that from you. You guys can let the mayor know if you have an interest, and then he can schedule it with me, and we'll go from there. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. I appreciate that offer. We'll see if we can get things put on the calendar. I had a couple of things I wanted to touch on, too. I know our time is rolling on here, but Just to start with completing our discussion about Twisted Cider, it was a great 5K. My role was pretty simple, sounding the air horn a couple of times, and once for the regular runners, and then again for the actually 40 to 50, about 40 small people, children that were running. I wanted to mention one thing. The numbers I heard a little later on were a little closer to 500, and so a good turnout. I had talked to some of the organizers. They were shooting for 300. So that's, I think, pretty darn good and a lot of fun. So if you participated, or maybe if you're on council, you got one of these, and it is your a memento from that. And if you placed in your division, you had a beautiful blue or red or yellow, or I think the other one was silver medal, or not medal, ribbon that I passed out in the afternoon. Coming from me didn't mean that much, but you sure earned that if you placed in your division, which the Mayor Pro Tem did. He came in second in his category, and Councilmember Wood also placed. And it was both of our council members running in the race. It was such a pleasure to be on the stage and presenting them with their winning ribbons, which I probably should have encouraged you to wear today. But it was a lot of fun. And they had a band there, some good eats with the help of a food truck, and if you were a registered runner, you had a free pretzel too, and we're talking like a giant pretzel, so they were ready for that. Folks were in line for a while to get those, but had a good time with it. So I hope it comes back next year. I thought it went very smooth, and it was a pleasure to be part of. Thank you for that opportunity.
Can you expand on the diversity from the different cities?
Certainly, yeah. So we did have it also helps that we had a good turnout from University Place. Our community, our runners were there, and that included our children and our families. There was one family that took first place in the 4 divisions that they ran in, and one of the family members took the overall champion, and they were from Lakewood. But we had Puyallup and Seattle and a variety of other communities, and I think there was one person. Federal Way, Gig Harbor.
Orleans, Sumner.
Yep, someone registered with Washington, D.C. as their community, so it was a great turnout. We had a nice time with it. And next year, maybe UP residents will win, but those folks in that one family are quite amazing. So, I think it was 17 seconds and change for the 5K, which was a pretty good speed for the 17-year-old family member who won that. Was the overall winner for the race, first in. Yeah. 15
minutes and 17
15 minutes and 17 seconds. Better than yeah. Thank you for, Well, you were in it, yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, so that was great to be part of, and we enjoyed that. Of course, we, as I mentioned earlier, tomorrow, August 2nd, is National Night Out. We're looking forward, as we do every year, to go to the events, and council members go, and other community, other University Place volunteers. We may have commissioners from various places attend as well. Go out with our police officers and with fire district and attend these parties around town. We have 40-some parties, I believe. I haven't heard a final number, but it's in that magnitude. And that's a lot of fun, but it goes pretty quick, and we make a short visit where we can. For council members, just as a reminder, you have this in your email, but just to remind you, it's 5 p.m. down below us at the police training room. It is not where we typically meet in the lobby here. A change of venue. Downstairs, police training room. Yep, out on Dexler, is it? Yeah. So that's where we're meeting. And since it is a change of venue, I wanted to emphasize that. But if you're in a neighborhood, and almost everybody is that is participating, it would seem, please feel free to attend. We'd love to see you there, and it'll be a lot of fun. And you may also see Congresswoman Strickland, who is joining us tomorrow night, and so look forward to having a chance to say hello to her. And thank her for the good work that she's been doing on our behalf here. I also wanted to mention, as the Mayor Pro Tem touched on, we did have an appointment, an ad hoc committee. The purpose of the committee was to appoint a pro and con committee, and a pro committee and a con committee for the upcoming police levy lift that's coming up in the November election. We did have a number of applications. We went through those applications and identified members for each of the committees, each side. And so I appreciated our citizens being engaged in that and taking the time to and being willing to volunteer their time to make the statements that they will need to for the voters pamphlet. These are the statements that go into the voters pamphlet and help reflect the opposing views and give some perspective on the proposal. And both sides are important to offer. So that's underway. And then let's see. And I did also want to mention that the November 15th council meeting, which is the second Tuesday of the month, this month, August. I said November, didn't I? No, how about the August 15th council meeting in 2 weeks from tonight? That council meeting has been canceled, and so we won't be here that evening. Now, we know everyone's going to be busy with a variety of things, but there was an opportunity here to give the staff a little bit of time, not so much to get away as focus on the budget, frankly, because it's right in the middle of the budget season, and they're busy preparing that so that when we get back in September, we'll be dealing with the budget and as well. Councilmember McCluskey, did you have something to add?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, since we're talking about events, and it's a huge event week all the way around, I would need to mention Movie in the Park.
Yes.
Is coming this Saturday at 7:30. There will be kids-friendly events, activities, the inflatables, also several different food trucks, and the movie is Encanto. So bring. I will definitely be there. In Encanto.
So
right.
And
so I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention in case everyone wants to come for an evening movie or just to hobnob with our citizens and others who venture into the park too. It's a fun, casual, informal opportunity. Thank you.
It is, and we have some giveaways for that and for tomorrow night with the National Night Out, which brings me to a little bit of a question. If you could perhaps, the location's at Cirque Park, and the time again is 7:30. Okay, thank you. And Council, on your way out, if you could indicate if you're planning on attending National Night Out, just so we can have the right number of goodie bags prepared. That's really all that's about. And Jennifer is working on that for National Night Out. I want to close out tonight. One other thing I wanted to mention to the public. So during our warm weather event, which has been extraordinary for us, we had the longest streak of hot days in the 90s in record for this area. The city tries to open up the atrium as a cooling station, and there may be other cooling stations, but I know as one of your elected officials here, I'm interested in knowing if that's something of value. But the fact is we're going to try and provide that. And if you do find yourself overwhelmed by the heat in certain situations and need a chance to cool down for an hour, for 15 minutes or whatever, there's public buildings that are generally available, and we're going to try and see that the atrium is available whenever possible in that purpose. I think that handles my comments. Thank you all. We're going to move on to our study session. So we're concluding the regular meeting and moving in our study session, which is now convened. And we've spent a fair amount of time this evening talking about the Pierce County Regional Council. A lot of the work they do is driven around the growth management policies. And lo and behold, we have David Swindale here to tell us about the growth management policies. So thank you, David. Working on my segues.
Yeah, thank you. I thought that was it's all very good that Denise and Javier had all that to say about the PSRC and the PCRC. You know, those two acronyms are constantly like, it's like a tongue twister. But yeah, we do a lot of work. They do a lot of great work. And the GMCC, their staff support group, as well as the TCC, which Jack and Nuri are part of, do a lot of work and get our projects approved or funded on a transportation side. Tonight, the purpose of the study session is to review the countywide planning policy amendments that are currently up for ratification by 23 cities within the county and the county itself. The purpose of the update is for consistency with Vision 2050 and any changes to the GMA that came down from the legislature, and a lot of them have to do with housing, as Denise indicated, as well as tribal coordination that we don't hear a lot about, but it's still there and it's important. For the most part, the council or the countywide planning policies, which I'm going to refer to as CCPs from now on, just to give that a name or an acronym. The most part, they stayed the same. However, there was some reformatting for the ease of use. For example, there's a new introduction section, talks about the 23 cities and towns plus unincorporated Pierce County, the urban areas unincorporated, as well as the rural and resource lands, the tribal lands, as well as the military installations. There are sections or chapters within the policies that address all of these. The PCRC, see, I'm doing it again, was established in the early 1990s. It is a requirement of the Growth Management Act to ensure that the county's comprehensive plan and the local comprehensive plans are consistent with each other. And likewise, according to or as a requirement of GMA, that our comprehensive plans are consistent regionally. And that's where PSRC comes into play and Vision 2050. So the purpose of these upgrades or amendments, again, is to make sure that the CCPs are consistent with the PSRC's or Vision 2050's multi-county planning policies. Of course, these are 4 counties that are included in the South Puget Sound metropolitan planning area, comprised of Snohomish, King, Pierce, and Kitsap counties. What happened so far is that the GMCC recommended amendments to the county CCPs to the Pierce County Regional Council. There were several study sessions before they recommended approval of them. That went on to the Pierce County Planning Commission, and from the Pierce County Planning Commission, it went on to the County Council, and the County Council has approved them. And attached to your package is a copy of 22 of the ordinance, if you would, that indicates that the I think it might be a resolution that indicates that the County Council has approved the amendments and is requesting that the county executive amend the interlocal agreement that was first established in the 1990s and then amended many times since in order to keep the countywide planning policies current and consistent. So now it's in our court, if you would, to ratify that. It takes, to ratify it requires 60% of the jurisdictions, representing 75% of the population. And that basically gives Tacoma unincorporated Pierce County veto power, because without either of them, we would not be able to achieve those numbers. So I'll just leave it at that, at least the population number. So you have 3 choices at the end of this. When you go to consider this, you can adopt the interlocal agreement, a resolution that we've written for that purpose to amend the interlocal agreement. You can take no action, and after 180 days with no action, it's considered to be ratified by the city, or you can actually basically create a resolution in opposition to the interlocal agreement and its amendments. There is in the introductory section a section which is called the User's Guide and Rules of Interpretation. And there were not very many contentious issues as we went through the update of the CCPs. However, at one point in time, when it was being studied by the PCRC, there was a suggestion by one of the representatives that a number of the policies should be changed from recommended or advisory to mandatory. And so a number of policies with the word should were changed to shall. And when we came back with that change, it didn't sit well with a lot of people, a lot of other representatives. So a lot of the shalls became shoulds again. To be clear of what that means, some new rules of interpretation were added to the countywide planning policies and some definitions, including a definition of what shall means, which is the standard dictionary meaning, and what should mean, should mean, and that is intended to be implemented to the best of local jurisdiction's ability, considering local circumstances. So that's basically what our expectations or the expectations of us or the city is when the word should is contained in a policy. Talking about expectations, it is expected of jurisdictions to be consistent with the countywide planning policies. However, how local jurisdictions choose to comply is left to the local jurisdiction. So there's not any body that's policing the countywide planning policies, and whether you're the city or the county is doing, the proper due diligence in implementing the policies. It is left to the local jurisdiction. Other terms that ended up being defined include consider, coordinate, assist, plan for, adopt, designate, support, encourage, promote, and advance. This is kind of interesting. You have to spell them out because those terms are used quite frequently in the CCPs in order to forward their implementation. There were 19 chapters in the CCPs. As I indicated before, most of them remain virtually unchanged. The affordable housing chapter, which is the first chapter, was not amended because it had already recently been amended and ratified in the last few years. The agricultural and conservation lands has a new introductory chapter, but the policies remain virtually the same. And that's also true with the amendments and transition chapter. Next is a buildable lands. If you can see that these used to be, they're all in alphabetical order now, and they used to be kind of all over the place. So that's one major formatting change. So there's a buildable lands chapter. Again, it was recently amended and ratified after the legislature came out with new rules about how buildable lands analysis were to be conducted. There is a new introduction to reflect that, but the policies remain virtually unchanged. Let's see. The same with the centers chapter, talks about regional growth centers and countywide centers. Again, it was not amended because it had already recently been amended and ratified. The rural areas chapter, which really just applies to unincorporated Pierce County, has a new introduction, but the policies remain the same, as is with the community and design, urban design element. The economic development and employment chapter is no change. The education chapter has a new introduction, but the policies are the same. Now, here's finally one with a change in it. Environmental section adopts, if you would, by reference, or at least mentions the new regional open space plan that was adopted recently by PSRC and encourages jurisdictions in the county and unincorporated county to implement that. There was also the second area that was contentious during the amendment or update process was a call to recognize a clear and present danger, that's correct, posed by climate change. And you may have, I know that Carolyn and I met with some people several months ago who came to the city and asked us to adopt, I think they were going to city by city, asked us to adopt this climate emergency. And we suggested that they go and talk to the PCRC, and they did. And that generated quite a discussion because of the way it was worded. The policy that came out basically told or instructed jurisdictions that they shall do this and they shall coordinate and create maybe a committee similar to the shape, the committee that's currently addressing housing. But after much discussion, that policy was watered down, if you would, and it now says that all jurisdictions in the county should explore the opportunities, benefits, challenges, political will, and logistics of creating a Pierce County coalition to address the impacts of climate change on a regional scale. Recognize the clear and present danger posed by climate change and its potential to drastically impact quality of life, the natural and built environment, and human health and safety for future generations. That's what ended up in the policies that you are considering this evening. They also added not only to the environmental chapter, but other chapters, call out boxes that, reiterate certain things that they feel were important to bring to the reader's attention. And they've also added some language regarding electric vehicle infrastructure. And I might add that just today I received a notice from the Department of Commerce that they have grants available to help to start planning for some more electrical vehicle infrastructure, with another round of grants coming up to actually purchase the equipment and install it. There's an essential public facilities chapter. Again, new introduction, but no policy changes. The fiscal impact chapter has no changes. There is, and I understand some questions from the council regarding growth targets. There's a chapter called growth targets in the countywide planning policies. And in the introduction, they basically recommend or recognize that there are new regional geographies identified in Vision 2050, which include metropolitan cities like Tacoma, core cities like Puyallup, Lakewood, and University Place, high capacity transit centers, including DuPont, Fife, Furcrest, Sumner, and other planning areas. And then there's cities and towns, which are really the smaller cities, and the unincorporated areas and rural areas are the new regional geographies in the Vision 2050's regional growth strategy. There is a policy that states that the countywide growth target should be adopted consistent with Vision 2050 as reasonably possible in an effort to bend the trend. And some of you may have heard of the term bend the trend, but it's been out there for quite some time because you don't seem to be able to meet the targets, but hopefully in the future, we'll have a higher rate of growth. And in that manner, we won't have a consistent growth, but rather, if you would, an uptick later on. And I think we're experiencing that now at the City of University Place. Kevin Brisky briefed me on what the relationship, or asked me if I could explain the relationship between the population growth targets and the countywide planning policies. Under growth targets policy 1, it states the Pierce County Council shall be responsible body for adopting housing and employment targets for Pierce County jurisdictions, subject to appeal to the Growth Management Hearings Board. The adopted targets shall be attached to the countywide planning policy as Appendix A for ease of reference. Appendix A shall be updated to reflect future county council actions, and Appendix A shall not be considered a component of the CPPs, and accordingly, an update to Appendix A shall not constitute an amendment to the CCPs requiring ratification by Pierce County jurisdictions. So it is, although the countywide planning policies do address the population allocations, talks about how that is to go about to occur, but the actual adoption of the numbers are not incorporated in the countywide planning policy except as an appendix. There's several more chapters, all of them with some small amendments to either the introduction or the background, with very few policy amendments, so I won't go into them. But there is one at the end that I think is interesting, and that it's under urban growth areas, and it talks about annexations and a new city. As some of you know or may know, that up by Bonnie Lake, there's a large development called Kahale. They are considering or have considered forming a new city. The PSRC has been quite critical of Pierce County in that Pierce County seems to be growing and faster than some of the incorporated areas, and the purpose of Vision 2050 is to try and steer that growth into incorporated areas and not unincorporated areas. So under this chapter, there is an emphasis on having existing jurisdictions annex areas adjacent to their jurisdictions in order to accommodate that additional population housing, rather than have it go to unincorporated urban Pierce County. So that's really a summary of what's going on. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. Let's see if we have some questions. Thank you for the summary. This is only 118 pages, but I thought you got to summarize pretty well. And for the conversation about population growth targets not actually being part of this document, but and adapted under the authority of the county. Councilmember Wood, let me get your mic on for you.
Actually, I think you just touched on what I wanted to ask about, which is the Pierce County Council will set our growth target for our core city without actually approving or asking our input on it.
No, that's not quite correct. David, can you explain what the purpose of the GMCC is?
Well, the GMCC is the Growth Management Coordinating Committee. It's a group of senior planners and directors from each of the 23 cities. The Port of Tacoma, the 12 Tribe of Indians is often there, the Transit District, and we make recommendations to the PCRC. The way that the targets are set or were set is that there is 5-year estimates and 20-year estimates for population come out from the State Office of Financial Management for each county. They have a high, medium, and low forecast. It's typical that the individual counties will select the mid-range of estimates. And then, so we use those numbers and basically sit around and divide up the population as by the different regional geographies. The way Vision 2050 comes in is that there is a regional growth strategy, and I talked about the different regional geographies, i.e. Tacoma, the core cities, the transit communities and things like that. And in Vision 2050, each regional geography in each county is given a proportion of that county's mid-range population. The county then hired a firm, AHBL, to do an analysis and meet with all the different regional geographies. And we had several separate meetings, as well as there was a coordinating committee among us, and I was a member of that as well. Basically, the way that the core cities, and I'm sure this was the case for most of the others, is that the initial allocation was based on our percentage of the population currently. So, for example, of all the core cities, the city of University Place has approximately 23% of the existing population of core cities. So then they took that number, the total number of the forecast for, the next 20 years, actually for the next 30 years, because it's OFM does 20 years and PRC does 30, or PSRC is a 30-year with Vision 2050. So you take that number, the total number of population increase for the core cities, for example, and that, according to Vision 2050, was about 60,000 people. And then they gave, they just said, okay, City of University Place, if you were to have 23% of 63,000 people, this would be your growth number. So that's how basically the formula comes out, and then we complain and we say there is no possible way we can accommodate that many people, and it goes back and forth, and eventually we agree. And I did meet with the City Council over a year ago, and probably 2 years ago, when this has been going on a long time, and got an indication from the council what the city was willing to plan for. And I took that forward and I wrote several letters. So it has been a long and arduous process, but we have come closer to what the regional growth strategy has for UP, and we're suggesting that we're going to bend the trend, because initially we don't see our current growth trend is anywhere near what it would need to be to accommodate our target.
And so, Councilmember Wood, and excuse me for interjecting,
Please
but
do.
I wanted to give you some more background. So, if I may, the county has the unilateral authority, but there's a process that they reach out, and we may not be happy with the outcome, but we've had some opportunity to influence the outcome, and that's the way it's been for a long, long time. David and I served together on the Growth Management Coordinating Committee in 2000 until 2006, when I was on the staff side of another city, and that's when things were just getting figured out. It keeps getting more and more refined, but which is a good thing. So I'll let you have the floor again. Excuse me.
Okay, so thank you for the explanation and better understanding of the process. Have we done anything as a city to determine what our desired growth can meet, or should I say maximum capacity based on our current geography, structure, or what type of housing, where we build this housing? I know we've done some of that, but do we know what our limits are?
That's what's called buildable lands. It's a program that was established by the legislature a number of years ago, and it's been funded, I think, every 7 years. We're required to do a buildable lands report, and the county is usually the body that is the key organizers. Early on in buildable lands, each of us got our own individual grants, and we would do our capacity analysis, which is basically looking at our current zoning, how many dwelling units are permitted per acre in each of our zones, determining how much vacant land we had in each zone, how many underdeveloped properties we had, how likelihood that those would divide or subdivide, and ultimately came up with a number of our potential capacity. And then we would also take in market factors, knowing that all these properties aren't going to develop. And if it's a mixed use zone, it's even harder because you got to figure out how much is going to be commercial and how is going to be residential. And then there's also some environmental constraints that we also take into account, be it some steep slopes or wetlands or that sort of thing, that it's just, the land's there, but you're not going to build on it. So all those things go in for consideration. More recently, as I indicated during my earlier report, the state legislature has amended the buildable lands report and came out with some more stringent requirements. And the buildable lands report has been consolidated so that now the county is doing all that work. And then again, just like in the population allocation, we sit down with members of the county staff and we go over whether or not their projections are realistic, because we have knowledge of what's on the ground. Since we adopted the form-based code and for our regional growth center, and we don't have a maximum density, we've got ample capacity. Now, as far as determining how much growth we want, we've been told how much we're required to plan for, and that's where the difficulty is finding the balance of what's realistic and what is the trend is the best indicator of where we are. But what are our infrastructure deficiencies? Up in the Northeast Business District, we've got limited sewer capacity. So, but we're working on that.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Wood. Appreciate that. Councilmember Keel.
Thank you, Mayor. David, thank you for your report. It's always very interesting when you do report this topic to us. And the numbers, I guess just to put a cap for me on that last piece about the numbers, is there any downside to us if we don't make the number by the time that they say?
There's a couple different things going on here. One, first of all, on the growth management side of the enforcement of the Growth Management Act, I think we're pretty safe. There are jurisdictions in the past, and specifically in the eastern side of the state, who are basically, thumbing their noses at the Growth Management Act. And then the governor said, well, say bye-bye to your transportation funding. And I think they came around eventually. So that's not something that we're really worried about here, but that is an enforcement provision that's contained in the Growth Management Act. For us, it is also about transportation funding, though. As a regional growth center, we have priority to receive grants and money from PSRC, which are coming principally from the Federal Transportation Administration. and it's funneled through that Metropolitan Planning Organization. They have their own requirements in order to get money from the federal government, and they have to come up with their own land use plan, and that's Vision 2050. So that's a big part, and they also have a transportation plan up there. So they have to do those things in order to be eligible to receive the money from the federal government, and then they have to implement them in accordance with the federal requirements, and that's where we're the recipient of that money. So we have to, again, it's plan for that transportation plan for that population. If we're not growing at the rate that, or not accommodating the population that they set out, they could choose to revoke our regional growth status, center status. And if they did that, we would lose that quote unquote priority. Jack is a good person to talk to about that. He's the person that's often sitting down arguing the finer points of and negotiating with his other colleagues as to what the significance of having a regional growth center or having a transportation corridor to or between a regional growth center. So these all come into play in determining how many points your project gets, and the higher points get the rewards. So that's our biggest concern with regarding not meeting our goals. What other things that the PSRC could consider, but that's where we're most concerned about is that transportation funding coming through that source.
Yeah, thank you. So it sounds like as long as we accept the goal and we are earnestly working toward it, we could have some negative impact, but historically we've been safe in that regard. As long as we're not thumbing our nose at it, then we should be good. Okay. Well, good. Thank you.
Yes.
So the question I have, the other question I have is around housing and affordable housing. As you may know, that there are a small number of legislators, state legislators that are trying to push some mandates on cities around what we shall do versus the should do, right? We shall do around affordable housing. The last bill, last legislative session failed, much to my delight. But they're making another run at this legislative session. And so the question I have for you is, what's the tenor of the conversation that PSRC and PCRC and the GMCC is having around affordable housing? Is it something akin to, well, the state needs to put some mandates on cities, or is it something where they're talking about, well, no, we need to make sure that cities have the control that they need to help legislate within their bodies?
Well, I think you know that as a former president of the AWC, I think the AWC had a very strong position that we insisted on continuing to have local control over our housing element and whether or not we were going to be required to add missing middle housing to our established single family neighborhoods. One of the most overarching, if you would, policies within our comprehensive plan, and it's stated right up front in the introduction, is that we're really all about, in a large way, of preserving the character of our existing single-family neighborhoods and growing our population and employment in our center and our existing commercial and multifamily areas. And that's a position this city has taken since I joined, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, and it is consistent with the other jurisdictions as well. It is disturbing that there are those legislators in Olympia who feel that they know better, because that's not necessarily how to accommodate or provide affordable housing.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so that sounds like that's where the conversation within all of the people you work with are continuing with the local control. Now, the other thing that AWC talks about too as well, and I hopefully that you guys are adopting that too, is that it doesn't preclude a city from changing on their own, changing that view and maybe allowing different types of housing, missing middle, for example, in their R1 zones. I mean, and we do that. I mean, here we've got duplexes, in R1s. We got all,
Accessory dwelling units.
accessory dwelling units and all that stuff in there. So I just think that what's coming from the legislature is yet again another, in my opinion, another misguided kind of mandate, not understanding that there are many cities that are really focused on what they're trying to mandate, and a mandate is a misstep. So sounds like you guys are agreeing to that, and I'm appreciative of that.
Absolutely. One size does not fit all. We know that. We really have to take into our account the local circumstances and our demographic as well.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Let's see. So we have 10 more minutes left in our scheduled time, and we have several more items on our agenda. I see that Councilmember McCluskey has a question she'd like to take on, which I'm prepared to do. We may need to interrupt or not to extend. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. It's not really a question. It's just a statement following up Councilmember Keel's question in regards to the missing middle and the state mandate, that proposal that miserably failed, which hopefully we'll do again. One of the legislative representative was at a AWC when they had a forum in regards to that particular House bill. She got an earful from pretty much all of the cities that were present, and also the panel of the cities. They are quite extensively and creatively trying to get the missing middle resolved in their city. The rep's position is that the council members are not adverse enough to resolve it without state aid. So as she stated that, she also got another earful from the council members and the mayors that were in the city, because they do have the expertise. And if what she should have heard is that maybe to revise her bill to aid and assist instead of mandate. But at the end of the day, the end of the forum, she didn't get the message, and it wasn't such a collaborative approach she was taking. It was more of an authoritative approach, because the end result is what she would like and what the cities would like. How to get there is the issue. And so hopefully that will fail again, because the cities do like local control, but they also are smart, innovative, and maybe the state could provide additional funding in regards to augment and aid and assist the cities. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. So, Council, we have some opportunity to study this further, not tonight necessarily, but again, the plan would be to have a response ready, prepared for us to adopt either on or before our first meeting in November to meet the timelines that are in front of us. At the same time, if we're ready, we can take this on. And I'm looking for a quick sense if we wish to spend some more time on study or bring this forward to consideration. Consideration Okay, very good. We will move it, forward for a consideration agenda item. Thank you. I do think we're going to need to extend. Is there a motion to that effect? David, thank you for your help. You may be next up too.
Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. I make a motion to extend the council meeting to 9 p.m.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Councilmember Belisi, I'll second.
All right. Then just on a voice vote, all those in favor of extending until 9 p.m., say aye.
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 Opposed? None. We are extending till 9. Thank you. And now we can move on to the Cirque Park Inclusion Playground, the main event, at least for those in the audience. But with our inclusive playground, it's a great opportunity. And we have our Director of Engineering, Mr. Ekman. Thank you, Jack, for coming forward.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. As you noted, tonight I'm going to present to you the recommendations we have from the Parks Advisory Commission for designating an area on Cirque Park for a footprint of a future inclusive playground. You know, as you may recall, a few months ago, a group of folks came, gave comments to council and requested the city consider identifying an area in Cirque Park for the purpose of constructing an inclusive playground in University Place. And as you heard from Ms. Saunders earlier tonight, this group has recently formed the University Place Park and Recreation Foundation, and they have quite a few plans for raising funds and identifying ways to get this playground built. But they need a place to be able to build it, to be able to start their marketing for this effort. So as a result of the comments received, council requests that this issue be referred to the Parks Advisory Commission for their recommendation in accordance with their adopted work plan of working with community groups. The Parks Commission, they considered this on both of their meetings both their June meeting as well as their July meeting. They also heard both from the Inclusive Playground Group as well as representatives from inclusive playground manufacturers. So it kind of identified the type of improvements that would be built. And then in your council packet, you will see both the letter that they have provided as well as a map of an area. So as a result of their consideration, the Park Commission identified an area at Cirque Park, and I'm going to bring this up so everyone can see it. It is right here. So an area in Cirque Park that can accommodate the inclusive playground as well as fitting within our existing facilities. So on this map, hopefully it's the scale is okay to see. I can zoom it in a little bit maybe. The pink area, if you guys recall, we do have an existing grant for a more conventional playground we received, we will be receiving through the RCO office. Those funds haven't come through yet, but we anticipate those soon. But that area the pink area is reserved for that specific playground, which is the way that program is. There's not a lot of wiggle room to kind of modify that. But fortunately, citing an inclusive playground kind of amongst a more conventional one kind of fits with the goals of both recreation as well as the inclusive playground group. The area you see, to kind of orient ourselves on the map, this is Cirque Park. The parking areas to the top here, the ball fields are down to the lower left. This little roof area here is our picnic shelter. And then this roof area here is the existing restroom. And then this little beige area here, although much of it is beige since this was taken during 2020 when we had shut off some irrigation because of some of the COVID stuff. This beige area down here is the sand volleyball court we have. So the light green areas shown here are the areas identified by the Parks and Recreation Commission or Parks Advisory Commission that would be available or recommended to be available for an inclusive playground. They have been sized and located in a way that it wouldn't negatively take away from our existing facilities. So there's a a fair amount of, they want to have a buffer from the picnic shelter, so you could still have, folks going to the picnic shelter could still have some green space to enjoy that, and also have a buffer from the volleyball court, so you didn't have balls continuously kind of getting into the playground area. Another thing to look at on this map is this little light blue area, and that is the Inclusive Playground Group have identified a need for an additional restroom, like a family-style restroom that could help better accommodate some ADA needs. And that would be this light blue area that would be then basically a separate restroom building, but in close proximity to the existing restroom, so they would work in kind of harmony between the two. So these areas have been also reviewed by our park staff, and also recommend that these would be consistent with our existing park facilities. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, this little spur up here to the top that shows this going off kind of toward this area. There's an existing gravel area to the east of our developed park area, and this has always been planned in long range to be a parking area, expansion of parking. And so by having this as a potential area for this inclusive playground, that also opens the opportunity, if their fundraising permits, that this could maybe an expansion of our parking lot for some additional ADA parking.
Jack,
and then this would be
I'm
a
sorry
direct
to
connection.
interrupt, but could you, I'm not sure, at least I can't see your cursor, and I would think there's several of us that can't. I just wanted to see where that hook area was, the possible expansion. I don't know, it may be more about the screen colors or something, but.
It might be, I wonder.
So you could just try and verbally describe just the area. We don't need to, I think I see your cursor now.
So
okay,
here's
now we see it.
this area right here would be the area that they would want to have, kind of like a connection into the parking lot.
Okay.
This area down here, the blue would be that future restroom. And then the green. One thing with these facilities too is they are designed, it seems like an awful big area, it's near about twice the size of this other area. It's the expansion of the playground. But one of the things in consideration when you're looking at inclusive playgrounds, you want to have some of the folks that would be wanting to use them have a little bit of sensory issues or sensory needs, so that a lot of times you want some of the features to be a little bit more distanced than you would in a conventional playground, because sometimes too much activity can overstimulate folks. And so that's why it is a bit bigger spread out than the other one, but it's also would be meant to kind of interact, and it would really feel and look seamless. Here it has like 3 chunks, but the ultimate design with this would be designed to be kind of seamless with what this other playground would be in pink.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. That's helpful, and I do know where that's at, as I think other council members do too. Well, council, does anybody want to have any questions or start a discussion? Council member Keel, I think you got just barely, though. It was close.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Jack, thank you for your presentation, and I also want to thank Ms. Saunders for her testimony and that whole group with the work they're doing. If you could put that back up again, that would be. I really am excited about the layout here, and as a parent of a special needs child that happens to be an adult now and went through all, Curtis High School and junior high and elementary school with special needs. She's in a wheelchair, as many of you know. I can tell you that your consideration and the group's consideration about making things larger and spaced out is exactly right. Not only do the folks have the sensory need, but they have the space need. I mean, some of them are in wheelchairs, and wheelchairs just take a lot of space to get in and out and around and stuff like that. So kudos to everyone thinking that, and I really love the little call out there that's close to the parking lot at that top, the northeast side of that, where you say you give access from the parking lot. I think that's going to be very key as well. And I don't know if you can even get some more parking around there, ADA parking around in there, but that I think that would be very helpful. My last point, and this is just feedback from experience feedback, I would say. When you talk about the bathroom, if there was more than one, and making sure that it's spaced out there too. I mean, a lot of times people talk about ADA bathrooms, they don't take in consideration the amount of space. Again, with wheelchairs and maybe some changing stations, and not necessarily changing station for just little babies. Yep. You might need changing stations for bigger babies, right? And so, those are just some things I'm thinking of right off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Councilmember McCluskey.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I do believe, Mr. Eklund, when we were talking about the inclusive playground, the restrooms are going to be 2 large restrooms with the larger changing tables. Is that still
that's
correct?
That's what this layout would indicate. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I also imagine that the playground surface will be conducive for wheelchairs and
Yep.
and
Yep,
the
sure.
integration into the non-inclusive playground that's going to be also conducive to wheelchairs, like traversing through it, because it seems like there's an integration component in here with the able-bodied and those who are not.
Yeah, we definitely,
Like that.
the goal would be to make this whole thing look like a seamless transition between. So it looks like one unified playground with similar access, at least for the surface, the surfacing, so folks could access all parts of it.
Right. And I understand that you don't have the design concept of the equipment and the layout yet, and so that will be exciting to see how that's going to be all laid out and how many actual activity centers are in the playground area as well. So, and I am also excited that University Place, maybe, if everything goes well and council considers this, to have an inclusive playground at a regional draw park of Cirque Park. I think it will be a significant signature piece, and it's something that is with the vision of University Place as being an all-inclusive, welcoming city for everyone of all ages and abilities. So, and I would like to thank Ms. Saunders and her, I just lost the name of your group, but United for UP?
University Place Parks and Recreation Foundation now.
Okay, so they changed the name?
Is the coalition.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so thank you for taking this baton and marching it through and getting it to this place. University Place will be better off because of all of your foundation's efforts. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jack, I just want to applaud certainly all the work that Chris and the committees that have led up to this have put into it. I know, having attended some of those meetings, it's been a lot of heavy lifting to get from idea and concept to where we actually can start seeing a plan. And I really like that. The other thing I really like is the integration. My biggest concern about the all-inclusive playground was that it was going to be put off someplace separate from the rest of the park, and I really disliked that even concept that could have been. So putting it in an integrated area, I think, and putting it in what I consider kind of a central portion, making it a centerpiece of Cirque Park, I think is a really great idea. The one concern I have, and I know several folks have already talked about it, but when you look at where the parking is and the access into this area, I don't know what the proper term is, but the handicap parking, and having that in proximity to that playground and making it truly accessible as you lay that out. I'm not the engineer you are, Jack, but making sure that we have that integrated, because when you look at the current parking that we have, there's quite a distance to traverse from where people currently park to where they would be, you know, when this thing comes to fruition. So I'm hoping that as we continue to put more meat into this concept, that we really take into consideration the accessibility of families when they come, and where they can park and how they can actually access into this playground area versus having to, it looks like you got to go down a walkway to get to it currently. I think we could do better than that. So short of that, just kudos really to the Planning Commission and everyone that's participated in bringing it to this point. I know we got a long ways to go, but hey, this is another hurdle that we've gotten over, and we're getting there, so that's awesome.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. So first, I'd like to add my kudos. I was really wondering how this park or this playground was going to be situated, and I think this is a very creative solution that I think works great. On paper, it looks wonderful. I do have also a concern about parking, but instead of just accessibility, which other folks have brought up, if this is a regional destination, we have a couple ball fields active and a whole bunch of people coming. I'm also concerned about the amount of parking we have there, if it will be sufficient to the future need. And if we could just do an analysis of that as we go along, especially if we add more ADA parking, because that takes up more space than single slots. If there's a way we could expand our parking capacity as you develop this plan, I think that would be very helpful. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Thank you for the comments. That's good. I'll take an opportunity to make a couple of quick comments. So I have, initially I was a bit concerned with Cirque Park being a potential location. The reason for that is it's a regional park. It's a very well-loved park. As a result, everything tends to gravitate to it, and if we tend to put everything in it, it's going to fill up. The other thing is we have other parks, and they have other opportunities with those other parks. But seeing this and how it's been put together, I think this looks like a good plan. I think look, the way it's been laid out looks good to me, and certainly it's an early plan version, so things move a little bit. The access question about parking, I think, is a very valid one, but I'm sure there's a design to accommodate that. The accessory driveways, perhaps a portion of that ends up being asphalt or something, but someone else can figure that out. I understand the need for a ADA family style, if you will, restroom or two, and I think the location here takes advantage of both, recognizes that need, and also is done in a way that makes both the maintenance and probably the constructability of the project a little better as well. So those are all things that tend to make sense at first blush. I think I want to certainly applaud the creation of the new foundation, the University Place Parks and Recreation Foundation. That's a wonderful thing, and this would be a great project to move forward in my mind. I also applaud the Planning Commission's willingness to take this on early in the process and adjusting their calendars so that we can move a grassroots idea that has momentum forward in our community and see if we can't bring that to fruition. So all of that is some things running around in my mind. As I see things now, I don't know that we have immediate council action that's required, but Jack, you were looking for some feedback, or is there something official at this point we need to think about the near future?
And that's, I envision that we would want to, because I think the group, the foundation, would like to have an official, something that they can take and have planning rely on to say, this area has been designated by the city council as for our use. I believe their time frame is they're hoping to have an official, something like that by their upcoming meeting in September. I believe it was mid-September is my understanding. And so I was envisioning this would be the study, and then we'd come back at that first meeting in September for a formal action.
Well, offhand, that sounds like an appropriate thing in my mind, and I have that sense from the folks around me. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have a comment?
Yes.
Yeah, let me get that mic on for you.
Thank you, Mayor. Jack, what other, Mayor Worthington mentioned about other parks. What did the Parks Commission consider other parks, and none of them made the muster to put something like this in them? I mean, that was question number one. Number two is, will there be a first aid station at this location because of the special needs environment that will be there? Thank you.
Sure. So of the other parks we looked at, they had also looked at the next most promising candidate is that area that's designated for a playground down at UP near the back corner of UP Primary. That area we got as part of the land swap trade with the Colgate Park and the re-situation of the junior high. And that looked promising from an area. The problems at that area, the concerns that especially they were raised by the foundation group, is that the accessible parking wouldn't be as readily accessible to the playground. It's a little bit more difficult. There would be some area for parking, but it'd be a much longer walk. And then, there are no bathroom facilities there, where here, even though we'd have to build one, there is still the infrastructure for sewer lines. And then they also really were stressing that if they wanted to make this because their goal is to make this a regional draw playground, and so they felt it most appropriate to be at our kind of flagship park kind of thing. And as far as first aid station, I think that's an excellent suggestion, and I'll certainly forward that on to Chris is in the audience, but I think that's certainly something we would advocate for as well. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, well, with that, I thank you. We'll look forward to seeing this in our on a September agenda, hopefully the first meeting. And we're going to move on to our next item, which is all about stormwater. But Chris Saunders and your group, thank you very much for bringing this to us. We appreciate that, and you being here as well. Lots of good effort, and it shows. Let's see, so now on to stormwater, and we have some time available, about 13 minutes or so, but it's yours.
All right, so I'll try to blow through this as quick as I can. I know we have time limitations. Let's see, so from the beginning, I need to, share my screen and get back to this. Okay, so what we have here before you is for your study is the first touch at our city stormwater management action plan, which is also referred to as the SMAP. So as a condition of our NPDES permit, we are required to develop a stormwater management action plan. Its purpose is to address water quality runoff within the city so that a plan can be created to protect this runoff within a prioritized watershed. So we hired engineering firm Gray and Osborne to develop this SMAP in conjunction with their work in updating our overall comprehensive plan. So in doing a SMAP, what you need to do is you have to delineate your watersheds within your city, analyze the factors for water quality within the watersheds, prioritize one, and then identify an area to focus improvements, and then create a list of potential projects that could improve water quality. So in the map here to the right, you can see that basically we have two primary watersheds in the city of University Place. There's the section that basically just drains mostly to Puget Sound. That's that purplish area. And then the area in peach is the, or salmonish, is an area that basically ultimately drains to Chambers Creek before getting to Puget Sound. We do have a little donut hole in the middle, the Curtis Pothole Basin, which water just goes and eventually just infiltrates there. So in looking at, they had to evaluate the criteria, and basically they had to look at what's the impacts for fish habitat, what are flow control possibilities and existing facilities, water quality, land use, environmental justice, and so forth. In doing so, they evaluated these factors and then determined that the Chambers Creek watershed is probably the highest priority, and really it's because it's the most sensitive water body compared to the sound itself, and it's a salmon-bearing stream and all that. And so then the next step is to identify in this watershed what is the priority area to then focus improvements. And so in looking at your sub-basins of this area, you really have this area here in purple, which is the basin that drains to Leech Creek first, and then this other area in the light green that more directly drains to Chambers Creek. So similar to the overall one, the more sensitive water body in this case would be Leech Creek, and that's we generally prioritize the recommendation of that. One thing to note that the consideration mainly for selecting these sub-basins are which area is going to have the biggest impact, and also which area has a realistic project opportunities. And that's because it's anticipated in the next NPDES permit cycle, which would begin in 2024, that would likely be required to implement whatever projects we identify as part of this SMAP process. So, in looking at Leech Creek, it right now is listed as an impaired water body. It has problems for both fecal chloroform and mercury. We also, another advantage of Leech Creek is generally the majority of that water body all falls within our jurisdiction. There's a little bit that drains into it, but for the most part, most of its catchment area is in UP, which means we have the biggest control over or impact over what can be done to clean the water. The areas themselves are all fairly a lot of older developments, so there's not a lot of existing water quality facilities there, so it's right for retrofitting. And then also, because we're also the one, it discharges directly into Chambers Creek, it allows for what they refer to as end-of-pipe solutions to capture more pollutants. And then the other thing in looking at it, so they've looked at this basin and they've identified a couple realistic projects that actually should have a pretty big bang for your buck. First of all, this thing you see up top, because we have these source of pollutants, these identified problems within the Leech Creek area of both the fecal chloroform and the mercury, one thing we could do is a study, basically, or propose to do a study in the next cycle to do a tracing to find out where these water quality issues are coming from. And so that would have if we could identify those sources, then we could develop a plan and maybe a later cycle to address those. And then at the same time, we have a number of ponds that also have the luxury of having a fair amount of land that we have around them. And these are the ponds. There's about 3 of them that are all located around Cirque Drive, kind of in the vicinity of Alameda. And I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but they're these, well, the big kind of mustardy looking arrows are pointing to these light blue areas. So these are ponds that we could have right now they have a minimal detention, like water detention ability, but not a lot, but they have very little water quality impact to them. And they could be fairly easily and effectively changed to treat water quality, but also they have a pretty large catchment area of water that drains to them. And so those are the ones we want to focus on. Another thing, the reason why we put this as part of a sub kind of task of doing the overall comprehensive plan is that in moving forward with our comp plan, these would then be incorporated as projects within the comp plan, which then would also factor in our potential stormwater rates to make sure we have stable funding opportunities for this. So I think that's kind of the quick and dirty of where we're going here. In general, they're hoping for a general level of comfort from council, whether you feel this is heading in the right direction. But other than that, no formal action would be needed at this time.
Okay, thank you, Jack, and appreciate your being able to do that in a compact way. Quick and dirty is a good way to phrase this one, I think. So I have a couple of questions, but the reality is, my sense is I'd like to look at this a little bit more. That might be really what this is about. And so I think I see enough nodding heads that we would continue for another study session now that you've got the issue introduced. When we get back, it would be great to hear a little bit more about mercury. That strikes me as being rather, well, interesting. And we have a non-point source at this stage, so that's interesting. And then maybe some idea of how big is the bread box, or which is to say, how big does the wallet need to be given the nature of the projects. So those would all be helpful. But anything else on the top list? Is that a good place to start? Okay. All right, great. I think, sure.
Just for when we come back to the next study session, since I noticed these ponds are right near some parks that we, like you said, property that we own or potential parks, kind of undeveloped right now. What the impact to the park itself, if we're adding facility there, how much of that would be restricted, that kind of thing. Just some idea of that. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like, would you guys like me to come back if I talk to our consultant, tell them we'd like to see a little bit more, have them develop further now the plans for what kind of potential impacts they can do with these storm facilities? And then would that be the timing to come back, do you think?
The next iteration of this, yes, but just part of that is also not to get big enough to tell us how many hundreds of dollars, but not so big it ends up being hundreds of millions. So
okay.
That's our concern. That's my concern. So okay.
At least a general budgetary impact. Yep.
Yeah, and Councilmember Keel has a comment as well.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, and you're probably already doing this, but I didn't hear it explicitly said, and that is the plans. But if you talk to us exactly what the overall goal is for each of those places where we're doing the work. Like, I know it's about water quality and making it better, but if you can call out, in this spot, this is what we're doing, and here's how it's going to be better, and here's the goal, and here's how it's going to be better. Just real simple, kind of stuff.
Yeah, and basically with each of these, what they would do to retrofit the ponds would be to add water quality features to each of the ponds, so that then we're actually, instead of just slowing the water down, we're also cleaning it up. And so that would be the goal here. And because all three of the ponds are direct discharges into the Leach Creek system, they have a big, they carry the most weight than, say, a neighborhood pond type of thing.
Very good. And Councilman McCluskey has a quick comment or question.
Right. Thank you, Mayor. The other curiosity that I have is that you mentioned that you're going to track where the fecal and mercury contaminants are coming from. So I'm curious as to how you're going to go about doing that, to finding the source of the contaminants. So maybe when it's time, bring that back. And so I know when we were talking in the prep meeting before council, I'm curious about that as well. How we're going to be little detectives and figure it all out. So thank you.
And part of the actual the study work would probably happen in the next permit cycle, but they would develop some part of then moving forward would be kind of develop, like you're saying, developing what are the techniques of what they're planning to do. So that I easily think we get that information from them. Mm-hmm. The mercury is a head scratcher because it's not. We don't have a lot of sources of mercury. It's an unusual spot. It's not typical of, say, road runoff. I know historically there were some gold mining gold mining operations, usually just kind of little panning kind of things along Chambers and Leech Creek years and years, many years ago. So sometimes mercury is a byproduct of that, so it could have been something related to that. But it'll be interesting. It'll be kind of a history lesson figuring out where that comes from. So you're right. We'll be like detectives out there figuring it out.
It should be. And folks, do we want to extend or shall we call this a night?
Call it a night.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate your good efforts. We're going to close our council meeting. Look forward to hearing more next time.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.
All righty.